Welcome back, everyone. This is St. Paul's Mailbag. I'm here with Bob Poole, and this is our second episode. We had so much great information in our first episode where we were talking about the question from the Stewardship Committee, and we were talking about the first question they asked, when and how did you realize God loves you? And we only got halfway through the questions. So I want to take this second podcast and finish up the questions and talk a little bit about the responses we got, how they resonated with you, and I'll talk a little bit about what I saw and what I heard too. So with that in mind, I want to talk about this, the response here. My parents and relatives and close family always told me that I was a beloved child of God. I think I've heard that so many times in church, in the sanctuary. But I just thought it was really cool that here's somebody talking about, they didn't just hear it in the sanctuary.
Right.
Well, for me, again, that's something that resonates very strongly with me because I've had many experiences in my life where I found out I was a child of God, a beloved child of God, because things went better when I realized that my faith was guiding me and I wasn't trying to guide myself. And so that's a very strong motivation in my life. Faith is.
Right. I want to touch on that for a second. You talked about faith guiding you and you weren't guiding yourself.
Right.
So like all of us, there's times when you're guiding yourself and not thinking, you were guiding yourself and not really thinking about it and don't even realize you kind of get off the path of letting faith guide you. That happens to all of us, I guess, right?
Right.
And
exactly. I've had, I've taken responsibilities and career options that I had no idea I was going to do. I wanted to be a banker, I thought, which is crazy, but I wound up being a fundraiser. And he said, well, how did that happen? Because one person told me I should try it. And I went out on faith, that one instance, and it really formed the rest of my life in a lot of ways.
But there were times that you kind of went off on your own, I guess, and faith
Yes.
reeled you back. And we were talking in the last episode about guidance,
Right.
where the outside forces, outside people guided you back. And that's something else that I guess you experienced as you went through your career of, I think you said 45 years?
45 years as a professional fundraiser from, several schools.
Mm-hmm.
And but faith is a strange thing for me because the church, in some ways, I was turned away from the church and in college because of a bad experience at one place. And it was funny, after that my son was born, I went back to the church, and that formulated the rest of my life of faith. From a bad experience, going back to church to a very good experience. And that made the whole thing make sense.
And that unintentionally, I might add, the segue into one of the other responses here. God helps me every day with my life. God is love. I know He loves me and all of us. And that you just kind of, without, honestly, no planning here, talked about that. And you had a bad experience. That experience pushed you away. But God's love brought you back. That's what I'm hearing you say.
That's exactly what I'm saying, yes. And this was, back in college. This was early 70s, finishing college. And I went to a Lutheran church in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was Missouri Synod. And I was the only black guy there. And the pastor told me I couldn't take communion. And I'm like, well, I was baptized in 1949 by God. And so anyway, I said, forget church. And but when I moved to North Carolina, in Durham, I went to a Lutheran church, and I was very welcomed. And so it was a totally different turnaround. And I wanted to be in church because I was a new child. I wanted him to be brought up in the church as I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so those two, one good experience and one bad experience, kind of reconnected me in a way that may seem strange, but it really got me back on the path.
I just in your voice, and I've heard the story before and some other things that we've done together, and it, even though it was 1949, I guess I'm a little naive. It's still kind of like, he's baptized and you're not going to give him communion, but to me, I don't get it, and I don't think I ever will. But I didn't grow up like you did. So you had these experiences that were horrible, but you didn't turn away from God. You got a little upset with the church, but still God brought you back into the church.
Right.
You brought God back deeper into your life. And as this person said, God helps me every day with my life. God is love. And that's an example of God.
The institution abandoned me.
Right, exactly.
That's the way I looked at it.
No, I think that's a good, yeah. And because he never stopped loving you and you never stopped loving him, it's the institution that there was a serious disconnect.
There was a big disconnect,
Right. So there's one more question, and we both saved this for last, or not question. Question remains the same. One more answer. And I want to read at least part of this. As a young child, I was taught about God's love for me. I was 13 when my dad became terminally ill with trachea cancer. As my mom worked, I became my dad's main caregiver. It was during the following 2 years that I began a conversation with God. And I found he always loves me and he was always there for me.
Right.
That is, to me, and I said this to you when we were doing our prep for this, that's pretty deep for a 13-year-old going through that, losing, obviously, knowing that their father's not well and losing their father, but still not only having the conversation with God, but realizing he, in spite of all this that's happening, that God's still there for him.
Right.
I can relate to that. I mean, because I may have mentioned my parents were divorced when I was 10. So that was very traumatic, of course. But I also realized that I had to step up and do some things to help my mom. Mm-hmm. So I got a paper route. I did all kind of things to help out the family. So, but for me, that was a faith journey because I knew that there was a better day ahead. And I didn't know what it was going to be.
Right.
But I knew I could do whatever I could to help make things better. And the church was still a part of that.
Well, and then this person, goes on in that same response. Mm-hmm. After they talk about God is always there for me, I began to feel His love every day. So the person's 13, dealing with the illness of their father that's terminal, and feeling God's love every day. Right. That's keeping an open mind, an open heart, accepting God's love in spite of the circumstances you find yourself in. Not unlike the story you told just a few seconds ago.
And that's what's so important about the stewardship journey. People can embrace you and make you whole in the church. Mm-hmm. And I think that, to me, is just as important in stewardship as somebody giving you $1 million. It's really just as important. It has as much impact.
Well, the two are tied together.
Absolutely.
We work we're a family, and we have a family that we're born with. We have the family that we grow as we go out on our own, and meanwhile we're in this church family, and being connected through stewardship through the church family, connected as this person was to God, in spite of all the tragedy going on in their life. That's where the stewardship, I think, of not just finances but time, talents are all a big part of that. And honestly, it's a triangle. Time, talents, and finances, they connect together in that triangle, and they're very interdependent.
Absolutely. And they feed off each other. They really do. Yeah.
And that kind of brings us to a closure with this question. Mm-hmm. I'd like to invite you back to do question 2 with me, and then we'll see if we can't find some other people to come in from stewardship for questions 3 and 4. But I'd like to invite question 2. Invite you to come back for that.
We'll love to. Sure.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. And we look forward to trying to get one of these out at least once a week, at least through the end of the year, in one form or another. So we'll see you next time.
Right.